Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet the island girl, she might dirty wine up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank Jxxiii for the intro music. You can find the link to our music in the show description. This is a special recording done live at Potapalooza 2023. My guest today is Louisa Jewell. Louisa is Canada's leading expert on the science of happiness and thriving. She founded Canadian Positive Psychology Association in 2012 to bridge the gap between happiness research and practice. She also hosted Audible's The Awesome Project podcast as a feature expert in the documentary, The Science of Happiness, and is also the author of the bestseller, Wire Your Brain for Confidence, The Science of Conquering Self-Doubt. She also holds a master's degree in applied positive psychology from UPenn. Louisa, welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
Thank you so much, Deepak. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here. And again, this is a bit of a shorter session because it's a special one for the Potapalooza audience this year. But I always like to start off with what got you into the science of happiness and psychology in the first place.
Well, it actually started many years ago, but 25 years ago, when I found myself in a really deep and dark depression. I was going through a really hard time. I then suffered through 4 miscarriages. And after 4 miscarriages, I just found that I wasn't coping well. And I went to see a counselor who was very helpful. And what I noticed when I was seeing the counselor is that he was actually reframing my thoughts. And I thought to myself, I really need to learn what he knows, because if I was able to just reframe my own thoughts and implement some of these strategies, maybe I can maintain my own mental health. Because what I found was, I'd be in his office, I'd feel like I'm getting better. And then, a few months down the line, something else would happen and I'm back in his office again. So I really felt like I needed to learn those strategies. And so he gave me a few books to read. And I discovered that there actually is a scientific study of psychological well-being and how to stay mentally healthy, and it's known as positive psychology. And so I applied at the University of Pennsylvania to study with the field's founder, Dr. Martin Seligman. And I read about 6,000 pages of research, and I applied everything I learned to myself, and I never became clinically depressed again. And that was so powerful for me. And so many of my colleagues started to say, well, what is this thing, positive psychology? And so, I'd have, 5 people in my boardroom to talk about it. Then I'd have 12, and then I'd have 40. And then after a while, I had to move to a different venue to keep telling, sharing what I knew. And so I founded the Canadian Positive Psychology Association in 2012. And what we do is we bring, hundreds of researchers in from around the world, as well as practitioners. We run large conferences, several large conferences, and we just bring people together to learn about what's new in neuroscience, in psychology, in the well-being research that we can all apply to help other people maintain their own mental well-being and their own health and happiness.
Amazing. Question: what did you do before you went to UPenn then to take these courses? What was your profession before?
I studied at University of Toronto. I had a business degree. And what I was doing was I was doing organizational consulting. So I was working within organizations doing facilitation and training, and all around, kind of personal development. So it was, then great to have those skills once I added on my master's degree in applied positive psychology, because I was, I already sort of knew how to create workshop experiences and how to consult with companies. So it was a great addition to what I was doing before.
Okay, amazing. As much as you feel open to sharing, but did you ever sort of put the finger on what was causing the depression before you kind of learned all these techniques and that sort of thing? Or like once you've learned these techniques and was working with someone professionally, did you kind of pinpoint to something?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you know what it was? It was rumination. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, or maybe your audience, but rumination is when, something happens and then you think about it over and over and over again. And it's more common with women than it is with men. Women are twice as likely to become depressed than men. And it's really interesting because a researcher at Yale University, the late Susan Nolan Huxama, ask the question, why? Why do women have twice the occurrence of depression as men? And she discovered it's because women ruminate more. She was actually able to pinpoint it. And I thought to myself, I really was a horrible ruminator. I ruminated about everything, and I had a lot of self-doubt, and I stressed a lot. I questioned everything. So I wasn't just ruminating about stuff that happened in the past. I was also anxious and worried and kept rethinking, having this worry go on and on and on with everything that I did. So once I was able to train myself to stop ruminating, that was a glorious day when that happened. And there's many strategies that I used to stop ruminating. And a lot of it had to do with getting rid of my chronic self-doubt. It's okay to have some self-doubt if you're starting something new, that's normal. But I had self-doubt about everything. And so once I was able to also deal with my chronic self-doubt, that the ruminations really stopped. And I decided that I was going to write a whole book about that, about self-doubt, because it was so chronic for me. But once again, so those two things, it was getting rid of the, training myself to stop ruminating, and reducing the self-doubt.
So I'm curious, what does the science say on, the rumination, being twice as much in women? Is it something to do with hormones, or I don't know, what does the science tell us on that one? And the reason I bring it up is because a little bit self-serving is like, I mean, I think we all do that to some degree, but my wife certainly does that a lot more, and so I'm using that as my lens for my question.
Yeah. So there's lots of reasons for it. So number one, women really do think about so many aspects of so many different kinds of relationships, and then the impact on those relationships. So, how is this now going to affect my relationship with my husband, my partner, my children, the teacher, the lady who's looking at me from across the street? We're always kind of more concerned with these kind of social relationships. Men, what the researchers have found is that men tend to get to action more quickly than women do. Women want to think it through, and they think by ruminating that they're thinking it through, but they're actually not. They're just regurgitating the same things and bringing up the same emotions. Where what the research has found is that men tend to just, get to action. Okay, something's gone wrong, I'm going to do this, and then, they can let it go a little more easily. So that's what some of the research will show.
I'm just curious. I wonder if part of that is, and again, painting with broad brushes here, of course, right? But would it be also maybe that men tend to like segment a little bit more, like, oh, this is a work relationship, this has no impact on my children or my family life or whatever, or this is with me and my mom and doesn't have anything to do with my wife, and that's how we think. It's like we can segment or box ourselves in surroundings, whereas the women are the opposite, like you mentioned earlier, like how does this impact everyone and the lady across the street and whatever, right? Is that maybe part of it as well?
I don't know if I've seen any research on, men being able to segment better than women. But what we do know is that men kind of have on their mind fewer domains than women. So they actually survey young women, for example, and they ask, how important are all of these domains in your life? Okay. And, women think about housework and, their careers, their children, their, relationships, working out, being thin is like so top of mind for a lot of women. And so what the research has found is that Men have sort of fewer things on their mind. So they might think about career, they might think about their family, they might think about where they want to live, right? They have fewer domains, whereas women want to be not just excellent in like 14 different domains of life, but they want to be perfect in these 14 domains of life. So, and that's impossible. And think about the amount of stress and anxiety to have to be perfect in all of these things, and thin on top of thin on top of all of those things. So when we have too many domains to think about, it just can cause, so many kinds of ruminations because we're trying to be perfect. It's like we almost have to beat ourselves up if we're not perfect. And in my book, I actually write about a great tool, and so many people have resonated with this tool, and I call it Peace at Six. And it comes from, I remember a coach of mine was doing a coaching call, and they asked the question, where are you now on a scale of 1 to 10, and where
Sure.
do you
Yeah.
want to be? And the guy said 6. He wants to be at a 6. And no, she said, where are you today? And he said, I'm at a 6. And she said, where do you want to be? And he said, yeah, 6 is good. Yeah, 6. I don't care if I, 6 is fine. And that kind of blew my mind because I thought, for me, I'm always trying to improve. And then I thought, yeah, why can't we just be peaceful and say, I can't do 14 domains. I can't be perfect at 14 domains. So I kind of choose 3 domains in my life where I say, I'm going to strive to be a 10 in those domains. I'm not going to beat myself up if I don't reach 10. I'm just, those are the areas where I want to be excellent and outstanding. I want to be really good at what I do. I want to be really good as a mom. I want to be a really good friend, and family member, right? So those are the things. And the other things like, housework, if you come to my house and it's messy, I don't care. I'm a 6 on that. That's not my thing that I'm
I'm,
gonna
I'm a
hang my
four. I'm a 4 on that one.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Exactly. So whereas, and I want to be peaceful at it because, it's one thing to say you don't care about housework. It's another thing to let people walk in the door and see that, right? So because I used to, like the day before, I used to run around and hide everything in the basement to make the house look good before people came over. So that's not peaceful. So, I think that's probably a part of it. It's this idea of perfectionism. We need to let go of that, perfectionism so that we can, have less stress and anxiety in our lives.
So, Louisa, you kind of mentioned a couple things there, and of course, we don't want to give the whole book away, but again, maybe the self-serving hat here again, speaking on behalf of my wife. What's maybe top 2, 3 tips for that woman who is like ruminating a lot that to help them along that journey?
Well, and I can't teach it in the session, but one of the things that really helps is a thing called cognitive behavioral therapy. So oftentimes what's happening when we're ruminating is we kind of have these cognitive distortions, right? For example, one of the cognitive distortions is black or white thinking. So we could so for example, um I do a great workshop and I get 49 glowing responses that say the workshop was great. And there's one feedback form that says that the workshop was terrible. I could engage in, black and white thinking there, thinking that, oh, the whole thing was terrible, because of that one thing. Because uh, bad is stronger than good in our minds. And you take a look at the psychology. I could
Right.
give you 20 pieces of feedback, 18 excellent, 2, really bad. And what are you going to remember tomorrow? Probably the 2 that were really bad. And they've done studies that actually show that as well. So we remember the bad more so than the good. For some reason, we think it's more important, right? It's a survival thing. We had to take a look at the bad because if we didn't, we might be dead, thousands of years ago, right? So we've kind of evolved this way to think bad is stronger than good. So, that kind of thinking then can put me into a spiral and thinking it was terrible. What did I do? Who is this person? Need to get their
Right.
name. It was that lady in the back who kept staring at, so that can create a lot of ruminations. If you can correct that dysfunctional thinking, and you can say, hold on a sec, you got 49 glowing responses. So that's, kind of a 98% out of 100. That's a great score on a test. So maybe that person was having a bad day. Maybe it'd be great to get some feedback and see how I can improve. But am I going to think that the whole workshop was a bust just because of that one? No, I'm not. And so once you can start to train yourself to think that way on the fly, right? This is what you're doing. And it's one thing to be able to, first of all, identify when it happens. For example, another thing that I would suggest to women to stop ruminating is also to be self-compassionate, to
Sure. Yeah.
say kind things to yourself. So, I used to beat myself up all the time. I used to call myself names all the time. Something would happen. Maybe I'd be impatient and yell at my kids, and I'd think, oh my gosh, you're the worst mother in the world. You're horrible. I'd go on and on and on and beat myself up. And we need to learn how to be self-compassionate and say, okay, that was not your best. You were not your best. I know you don't, want to yell at your children. Maybe give yourself more time in the morning to get the kids out the door, so you're not being impatient at those times and yelling at them to get out the door. So what can you do differently? And you're not the worst mother in the world. You're actually a really, really good mother, and you had a bad moment. So it's really kind of this talk in the moment to reframe what is happening so that you can be more self-compassionate, and also you're not distorting what's actually happened in a way that's going to cause you to keep thinking about it over and over and over again.
I love that. I think that's, again, not to paint with a broad brush, but I think, yeah, women tend to suffer from that a little bit more than men, although of course men have that as well. And I think more people need more self-compassion to themselves. We tend to give it out to others more frequently than sometimes we give it to ourselves. So thank you a lot for sharing that. So just as we're kind of coming towards the end here of the podcast here, now, I'm all about health and longevity and reversing the effects of aging. That's not what this podcast is about. But I do like to ask my guests is, what is, that one thing, maybe it's your morning routine or that one non-negotiable that like you like to do for yourself for your health and your longevity?
It has to be exercise, 100%. There's so much research that shows that exercise helps with, our cognitive functioning, with memory, with everything. They've done studies where they actually show that exercise can be actually an even more effective antidepressant than even antidepressant drugs themselves for some people, not for everybody, but for some people. And if you take a look at what's actually happening in our brain when we're exercising, there's so many things that happen to promote that kind of good cognitive functioning. And we think about not so much about longevity, but how can I expand the health span? How can I
Absolutely. It's all
stay
about health span. Yeah.
exactly? How can I have that vitality until the end? How can I have that good cognitive functioning until the end? Because I don't want to be a vegetable, sitting in my diapers, for several years of my life before I go. I really want to be kind of vibrant and then say goodbye, right? So that's what we're trying to do. So the other thing is that I find is that exercising in the morning is a great thing to do because it kickstarts your brain. You're more productive. You feel great. It also has so many physical health benefits as well. So it's got to be exercise.
Okay. I love that answer. But Louisa, you didn't tell us what is your go-to? What's your go-to exercise then?
Oh, well, I do a thing called Beachbody. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like a database of, thousands of different workouts that you can do. So I'll do like a 100 day, like today I'm on day 62 of 100-day program, and I just do whatever, whatever she's doing on that day. And so it kind of takes the guesswork out of what I'm going to do that day. And it's a good balance because I might do upper body, lower body, cardio, yoga. It's a good mix. So it's a nice variety, and it gives me an opportunity to do something every single day.
Love that. Awesome. Awesome. And a streak, which I think consistency is the biggest thing for building some sort of habit, especially a healthy habit as well. Louisa, I don't want to put you on the spot. Before we got on here, I forgot to ask you, do you have a gift or anything for the audience, or a downloadable or something to share? And just for everyone as well, we'll have all of Louisa's links to her website and how to find out about her book and all that in the show notes as well.
Okay, good. Well, I actually do have a small ebook called The Rumination Cure.
Oh,
So
perfect.
if people are familiar, if people are suffering from rumination, they can download my free ebook. So I can give you the link and they can download the free ebook from there.
Awesome. Well, I'll be downloading that for my wife for sure, and myself. So I encourage everyone to do that as well. And Louisa, I want to thank you, for joining us with a special episode here at Potapalooza 2023 on the Deepak Saini Show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. And yeah, I'm definitely going to download the ebook, and again, everyone as well. And we'll have all the links in the show notes. I'm going to throw it back to Jxxiii, who's going to guide us out with some music. And again, thanks for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Exceptional results for the exceptional you. This episode is brought to you by Optimizers Magnesium Breakthrough. This is a product I've been using and our family's been using for 4 years already. What I love about it, it has 7 different forms of magnesium in it, all the forms that your body needs for all 400 processes that your body needs magnesium for. Most magnesium supplements have one form and usually a crummy form of magnesium. This has all 7 forms that your body needs. So click the link and get at least 10% off. Sometimes there's specials and you even get more. So check out Optimizers Magnesium Breakthrough.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company